Welcome everyone to GIS Day. As Jack said, it's 21 years, the 22nd GIS Day held. And over the years, it's been the purpose of this, as Jack talked about and Chris talked about, to share with each other what we're doing in GIS. But I think even more importantly, it's about sharing with the non-GIS professional community what we do and how we can help them in their work. And today's keynote speaker is someone who's doing absolutely incredible work. As you can see on the photo on the screen, we're looking at the Fogo Island Inn. This is an incredible place on Fogo Island in Newfoundland and was created by our keynote speaker, Zita Cobb. So Zita is a remarkable woman, and she's going to talk to us today about the possibility of an island. And she's spent a large part of the last 21, 22 years of her life figuring out how local small communities can thrive. In fact, she founded a company called Shorefast Consulting. And Shorefast, it's a nonprofit organization with two of her brothers to figure this out. And she's going to talk to us about this, but I'm going to say just a few words about Zita. She told me that she left Fogo Island when she was 16 years old to go to university, the first one from the island that had got a degree beyond high school. She ended up joining a company that later became JDS Uniphase, a tech company in Ottawa, and she was the chief financial officer, and it was incredibly successful as one of the world's first high-tech companies on the internet. And she actually decided to retire when she was quite young in 1998 and go back to Fogo Island and spend her I won't call them winnings, they were earned from her career in tech as an entrepreneur to start doing some really interesting things, and she'll talk to us about that. I met Zita a number of years ago when she was a judge of our app competition for university students doing an app competition. And then I recommended to Jack Dangerman, he was looking for a holiday in Atlantic Canada. I said, you've got to go to the Fogo Island Inn. So he booked to go to the Fogo Island Inn, and Zita met him, had dinner with him, and Jack invited her to California to do a presentation, and she spent some time at Esri. So she knows who we are, and now after this thing, you're going to know who she is. We're currently working with her. She's invited us to provide some support to a really incredible project she's doing called the Community Economies Pilot. What is it going to take for communities to find their economic mojo? I don't think I'm going to say much more except to say that Zita has got many, many honors. She's a member of the Order of Canada for her work, and she speaks all over the world, consults all over the world. And today we have her here with us talking about the possibility of an island. So Zita, welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk, as Alex said, about a particular place, and I know you're all kind of experts in place, and give you a story of this particular place and how it connects to what you do. The image you're looking at is actually one of the four corners of the flat Earth. So says the Flat Earth Society, which is a wonderful piece of lunacy that I will talk about a little bit later. But according to them, it is flat and there are four corners, and this brimstone head on Fogo Island is one of them. So I always love this quote, and I know even without looking at the news to see what's going on in British Columbia, and I imagine we have people with us from British Columbia today, we know that we humans have caused a bit of a mess for ourselves. And if you haven't read Andrew Potter's recent little book called On Decline, I recommend it. He says, we humans have picked all the low-hanging fruit and caused a real mess for ourselves. And to make matters worse, we don't seem to have the collaborative architecture that we need to actually tackle the real problems we have together. And so I don't want to belabor all the problems because I know you know them, but I would say, I would describe them this way. I think we are extremely disoriented as a species. And we have created these tools and these abstract tools like money and network computing, for example, that really in some ways have functioned to undermine our relationship with the physical world. And I think we're like teenagers, you know, we're just trying to figure out how to use these abstract tools. We have created an economic system that certainly undermines our relationship with place and with kind of a wrong-minded globalization that we're trying to find our way out of. And all of this is a mess. How do we start to clean it up? I think it starts with geography. And I think it starts with the fact that whether we like it or not, we have to accept that we are embodied, physical, social creatures. And I think that geography is how we're going to reorient. And I think that is where GIS comes into this, because I think it is the tool that geography needs in order for geography to actually ascend and assert itself as it needs to. I was listening, actually, Alex was talking about Jack Dangerman. I was listening to Jack's little 2-minute video as an introduction to GIS Day, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. And he was remarking about how few people know about GIS, which is incredible, and more people need to know, because I think it's one of our most important tools. And I agree very much with what Jack said. Well, I generally agree with almost everything Jack says, that we can make a better world if we use the geographic approach, and GIS is part of it. So that's kind of the setup to the talk. I am going to talk about all of this from the point of view of one specific place. And I do believe this about a small island being a good proxy for a small planet. I love the work of an artist named Lucy Lepard. And, I don't want to misquote her, but she talks about, our occupancy on the land or in geography is an important part of the environment. And without a continued relationship to place, how can we possibly feel progress? And how can we create meaning, and how can we have a sense of inheritance? And so on this small island called Fogo Island, it's bigger than what you see on the screen. It's actually about 4 times the size of Manhattan. On this small island, we have had continued habitation for a very, very long time. Not as long as our indigenous communities, of course, because this is a settlement of Europeans, but the people I grew up with and the families around here, some of them go back 400 years. So we do have this long continued occupancy in a place. And with that has come culture, and I'm going to talk about culture. And I think small islands place has a genius, and I know you all know that, but I think small islands have a special genius because they are small. They are sort of a comprehensible totality. And as a result of that, they are exceptionally empowering and exceptionally orienting. And so to go to this little island, it's off the northeast coast of Newfoundland, which means it's off the northeast coast of Canada. And there we get closer and closer to it. It's about 300 square kilometers, give or take, 10 little communities. And I grew up in the one called Joe Bat's Arm. And historically, we really didn't know each other. And just to give you a sense, I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, I was at my house, which is down the road from where I'm sitting at the inn, and the power just went out at my house, which, normally isn't a big deal unless I'm connecting with people like you, because we got electricity at my house in 1971. So we actually haven't had it for so long, but we're part of Canada. And I want to share this map with you because this is a map. It's actually the elevator. It's in the elevator at the inn. And I want to share this map with you because all the things that you can't read toward the top of this, these are kind of invisible, but super important shoals and rocks, most of them underneath the water. But this is where fish congregate. And this is such an important part of our cultural knowledge and how we've managed to survive out here on the North Atlantic, because the fishers know where to find the fish. They know the underwater topography because of being able to follow stories and markers handed down through the generations. So Alex shared this. I jokingly say this is like a cherry on a very old cake, because it's in some ways the least important thing about Fogo Island, but it's the most known thing about Fogo Island. Our culture is derived from place, like every culture, and specifically from our relationship with the North Atlantic cod. And we have been fishing out here 400 to 400 years since the Europeans have arrived. We built communities that look like this. This is tilting, and structures that look like this. And you can see the very nuanced and intimate relationship with the land in the way that we have built. And we have 7 seasons. This little island, it's actually off of the big Fogo Island, it wasn't resettled, it was actually abandoned in the 1930s. But I want to point out to you the church that is there was consecrated in 1867 and built sometime before that. So you get a sense that this, by Canadian standards, by the nation of Canada, a very old place. We fished like this, very close to the land. This is a cod trap. It would be joined to the shore by a rope called the Shorefast. And so the charity that I found it with my brothers is called Shorefast. It's a metaphor for may we always be shorefast here in this place. So we fished like this in small boats close to land for 350 years, perfectly sustainable. We traded our fish at the end of the fishing season for the things we couldn't grow or fish or hunt, like flour and fabrics with a merchant. And it was a cashless society. It was a society that had no money. And then this happened. And when these factory ships started to arrive in the 60s around our island, it took no time at all for them to take just about every last fish out of the ocean. Now, because I know I'm speaking with people who think about place a lot, these ships came from someplace, but they really didn't have a relationship with place. And I think this was really the beginning of the industrial age where place suddenly was left out of the consideration set. And my father was Lambert, and he was an inshore fisherman, and he could not understand what these big ships were doing. He used to say all the time, what are they thinking? What are they thinking? And he finally figured out, even though he had no money and he had no relationship with money, that they must be turning the fish into money, because it's the only way he could explain why they would catch more than they seemed to need. This caused a resettlement of many, many of the outport communities around Newfoundland. And there's a song, and Labrador actually, there's a song by a Newfoundland band, and the song is called the Outport People. These little communities are called outports. And the line in the song is, they moved without leaving and never arrived, speaking to what happens to people when you disrupt them from their relationship with place. On Fogo Island, we didn't resettle because in a way we were kind of saved by the arrival of Memorial University and the National Film Board of Canada, who arrived with no answers, but a lot of questions. And questions are the most important thing. And in their questioning, they brought Fogo Islanders together. Remember these 10 communities that didn't know each other, brought us together. And out of this, something formed called the Fogo Island Improvement Committee, and Fogo Islanders found a way to start a cooperative. And that cooperative owns the fishery on Fogo Island to this day. And it optimizes for place. It optimizes for this community. And I'm pretty certain that if we hadn't started this co-op in 1967, we wouldn't be living on Fogo Island to this day. So I'm going to talk about business models a little bit later, but there you get a sense of why we're still here. And now we fish, our main fishery now is crab. The cod are trying to make a slow comeback. And one of the cruel ironies of nature is the fishery for crab starts much earlier than the cod fishery, starts in April, and we're on the northeast coast of Newfoundland, so we have to pack ice then. So our fishers have to go out through ice like this to start. To go back to my father, as I said, he had no money, he had no sense of economic logic, but he had a very, very deep ecological logic, and he had a very deep social logic, because that's what it takes to get by and build community and muck along with people you may not even like, let alone agree with. And when I was a young child, he used to say to me, you need to figure out how this money system works, because if you don't, it's going to eat all the things we love. I studied business, as Alex said. I'm not the first person from the island to go to university. We actually have a long line of people that have gone to university and are produced some fantastic teachers and other professionals, but I was second one in my family to go to university, and I'm from a family of 7. Anyway, I studied business, and my career was in wave division multiplexing, which are the little optical components that have enabled actually what we're doing here today. So I feel like when I left home, I left a physical embodied life, which is really all about feeling the geography, living the geography and the culture that comes from it, and then moved into a world of more abstract things, money and technology, information technology in particular, and optical technology. And this was the company I worked for. And this fellow who was my boss and is still a good friend used to say this every morning: the most important thing is to keep the most important thing the most important thing. And this is the most important thing. And I know all of you know this. E.F. Schumacher, please read the book, Small is Beautiful. It's quite small. Nature and culture are the 2 great garments of human life. Well, place holds nature and culture, which is what gives place its primacy, even though we've kind of forgotten that. And he said, business and technology are the two great tools that can and should serve them, which is why I'm so excited again about GIS and its potential to give geography its proper place in life. And I want to take you now to Fogo Island to some of the Shorefast things and our journey. This is our vision. It is about place-specific communities and building a global network of resilient place-based communities. We're organized in this way, maybe a bit unusual. So Shorefast is a registered charity. We operate a series of businesses that you see on the left. The biggest one is the Fogo Island Inn, and I'll talk more about that later. And they're community-owned businesses. We operate them as social businesses. We target a 15% profit. We don't always get it. We certainly didn't get it in the pandemic. And we take what we earn from the businesses and reinvest them in a whole series of programs on the island that have to do with knowledge, really. They have to do, art is about knowledge, ocean stewardship is about knowledge, and community economies in a way, well, actually it is about knowledge. We think about it as cauliflower thinking, meaning each little community is a floret, and we live in those florets with our physical embodied selves. And the stem holds all these florets together. They're all different sizes. And the stem has two jobs to do. Number one job, hold us all together. There's only one cauliflower. And number two job, bring nutrition to the florets. And we spend a lot of time thinking about nutrition flowing to the florets. And when you think about those big ships that came and basically took every fish out of the ocean, they weren't thinking about florets. They weren't, because they had no relationship to place. They were just existing and operating and optimizing in the stem for something abstract called money. So we don't have the time to get into all this, but I want to direct you to John Fullerton's work at the Capital Institute. There is a lot of thinking and writing and doing around the idea of how do we build a regenerative economy. And I just want to point out to you, and you'll be happy to know that right down there, slightly to the left, it says it honors place and community. So I find all this work hugely encouraging, which is why I do think we will find our way out of this pickle I talked about. Our work is about enabling the local, and there's something called asset-based community development, which is a whole profession unto itself. The questions of asset-based community development are these: what do we know? What do we have? What do we miss? What do we love? And what can we do about it? And as soon as you ask and answer these questions, then you're starting to work together. And instead of focusing on the deficits, like what do we not have? We're poor, or we don't have good healthcare, or whatever. Don't focus on deficits. Focus on assets and get behind the assets. And that's how our work is done. And it really is about leveraging those assets in order to build community wealth. And when I say community, of course, that I mean place-based community. These are some of our assets. You get a sense of place here on Fogo Island. We are in the Labrador Current, and every year, as my friend Pete says, half of Greenland breaks off and comes down on top of us. This is multi-year ice that's come down from Greenland, and this would come in about April month, and then icebergs come after that, and they are coming. Greenland is breaking up. We did not start our projects with the inn. We started our projects with art and something called Fogo Island Arts, because art is about thinking, and it helps with sense making, and it is a way of knowing. Because I think we humans, we're made up of more than our brains. And I think part of the kind of reductionist thinking we've had in the world that have caused some pretty bad outcomes for ourselves comes when we use our brains too much and we don't use our whole selves. And we're not using all of our knowledge sets. I mean, really, our brains just kind of measure, the kind of risks, and we evaluate pros and cons maybe, but we actually make decisions with our whole bodies. We make good decisions with our whole bodies and bad decisions just with our brains. And so Fogo Island Arts is a residency-based program, and we do exhibitions and publications. We built some studios for the artists that come. This was the first time we've been building little buildings out of wood for hundreds of years, but the first time we built things that are contemporary in nature, and you get a sense of some of these. And we have 4 studios built, and we place them around the island in ways, they're like little punctuation marks on the landscape, and they bring our attention to something that we might have missed before in a place. And you get a sense, Kate Newby was one of our early artists. I want to share this map. I've been excited to share this. This is from the work of an artist named Kay Burns. And she plays, she's a conceptual artist, and she plays with this idea that I mentioned at the beginning about the flat Earth. And, you know, how do you know it's not flat? And she flattens globes and challenges people to prove to her how you know it's not flat. Anyway, it's, I think, a good way to question what do we know as opposed to what we think we know that just ain't so. Anyway, I don't think it's flat, just so you know, I'm not a complete lunatic. Another artist named Carol Penton has been collecting stories on the island from some of the older people on the island. And I love this one of Mrs. Isabel Tobin and about change. And it comes back to, you know, what is our intellectual heritage? And it is attached to a place. And as Jack said, like we have so many of these stories here on this island, and they're on old cassette tapes. And, you know, we have an oral tradition. And of course, I know all the stories my parents told me, but what do we do with them? How do we hold on to them? How do I pass them on to the next generation? And to come back to what Jack said, he said, you know, if we use a geographic approach and GIS, it gives us a way to integrate layers of information and to see things in a more holistic way and to communicate better. And so Mrs. Isabel Tobin is gone, but I think she'd be very happy to know that we now have GIS, and that's our last studio. And now you get the sense between the relationship between the traditional buildings and the new buildings. And architecture, of course, is a part of how we make meaning. And architecture, if it's done well, should carry our relationship with the past, which I think Todd Saunders, the architect, has done well in these studios. Once the arts program was on its way, we started to work on the Inn. And that took really 7 years of thinking about it and talking about it. And that when we were asking governments to partner with us in the early days, we got a letter back, which was kind of a funny no, but I'll show you what it said. The letter said this, that the project wasn't normal, practical, reasonable, or rational. And I want to point out that if you use only economic logic, I think this will be true, that it's not normal, practical, reasonable, or rational. But if you use geographic logic, if you use social logic and ecological logic, it's totally normal and practical, because we build buildings like this, for example. And so I'm pleased to say that the governments did come along with us on the project, both did. And it ended up being 10% of the projects were funded by the governments, 10% each, I mean, and then 80% from our own private sources and philanthropy. And so we got busy building. There's actually the architect right there. And the Inn is an X plan. It holds the rhythm of opposites. That is the actual design of life itself. It's for people from here and people from away. It's about the past and it's about the future. And when you look at all the things that have been said about the Inn, what means the most to me is this one, that it is an act of human culture, and culture is how we make sense of place. I love the work of Gil Chin Lim. If you don't know him, he was an urban planner, and he wrote a lot about humanistic globalization, that we have to create a global network of intensely local places and a sense of what it looks like in the summer. And here we have the inside of the Inn, one of the early drawings. And we saw this as an opportunity to use the traditional skills that we have that have been born of this place, to use the materials of this place, and to translate them in a contemporary way to create the interiors of the Inn. We have 29 rooms because, importantly, you have to get scale right. Tourism projects can be devastating to places. It's a bit of a dance with the devil if it's not done properly. And one of the most important things to get right is scale. It has to be appropriately scaled to the size of the place. And we are only 2,500 people. And as Phyllis Cole said, we can only love so many people at a time. So we built an Inn with 29 rooms. And we've always been guided by this poem. And I love this idea about the rhythm, you know, of walking. And our work is to hold on and reach out. It's not to hold on and build a wall. It's to hold on and reach out and belong to the world. But the idea of walking means your feet are on the ground. It starts with place. And so we have a long tradition of building boats. So we invited these designers to come. These are all contemporary designers from around the world, really, to come and help work with us. And they were paired up with local makers. And out of that, all of the objects of the Inn were imagined and built on the island. And of course, that gave rise to another business. And I want to pause on this chair, which was designed by Elaine Fortin, who you saw in the earlier slide, and say, consumerism is not that we love things. Consumerism is that we don't love things. And that's why they end up in the landfill. So I think when we really orient ourselves properly, we will start to understand that objects can help us orient. Because we can have a relationship with a chair, because a chair or any object has emerged out of some system and out of some place. And when we buy that thing or have that thing in our lives, we are voting for that system. So why would we have an anonymous object in our lives when we could have one that puts us in a relationship with a place and with other people? And so we spent a long time thinking about everything: color, our own history, our relationship with fabrics, poking around in old houses to try and understand how the people who came before us made sense of things. And we have a long tradition with quilting, and this is the kind of thing we built from all that knowledge. The bathtubs, we don't have a history of bathtubs, so we bought them from a place in Montreal. But we made almost everything ourselves that we could, and that gave local economy, and it gave us a chance to use our traditional skills in new ways. Even the wallpaper. Why should we on Fogo Island tell the stories from, I don't know, Italy? We got a lot of stories of our own to tell, and they're stories of place, and we put them into the wallpaper. A library and a cinema, which is a partnership with the National Film Board, going back to what I told you about earlier. The dining room, which is like the prow of the ship. And of course, the food we serve is from this place. And we spent a very long time, and still do, trying to understand what we ate traditionally and what else is here that our ancestors maybe just didn't understand was edible or didn't know what to do with it. And so our goal is that 80% of what we serve here comes from this place and near, and the other 20% can come from further away. And sometimes we actually eat outside. So we spend a lot of time thinking about this. How do we improve the quality of our awareness? And I know that GIS is actually about improving the quality of our awareness. And we've been particularly taken with how do we improve the quality of our economic awareness, because I think too many people feel they have no control over the economy. It's something that's over there. And that makes us a bit cynical sometimes, which I think is not healthy. And so we came up with this idea to borrow from the labeling on food, which is hugely informative and helpful to our decisions around what we eat. And we use the same format, and we do what we call economic nutrition labeling. And we simply tell you for everything that we sell, where the money goes. So this is for a stay at the inn, which is not a small amount of money, because we practice what we call true cost pricing. 49% of what you would spend to stay here goes to the people who work here. Where else should it go? Of course it should. And in the general hotel world, I can tell you that that number is usually around 30%, not 49%. And then we tell you all the other breakdown, and then we tell you geographically where the money goes, and 65% of it stays on Fogo Island. And that's the whole magic of local economies, right? Is to, when the money comes, hold on to it and get it to move around at least 7 times. And so there you go, a lovely winter day. We're coming up to that, and a lovely summer day on Fogo Island. This is actually the name of a show that was recently, an art show recently in Europe. And I just love this. Everything passes except the past. And what do we do with the past? And how do we carry it forward? Well, it's in buildings. We've spent a lot of effort and time and money at Shorefast restoring buildings, because they contain knowledge, they contain our relationship with the past, and they contain our relationship with place. So this is a punt premises. This is the headquarters of our furniture business. All my life, this building has been falling down. And we finally have cobbled together enough money to fix it up. And that is now the furniture shop. For our furniture business, we also do economic nutrition labeling. So for example, this chair, 51% of it goes to the people who make the chair, 71% of the money stays on Fogo Island. We have a whole set of initiatives, too many to talk about, that have to do with a higher fidelity relationship with the ocean. We started a tiny little company called Fogo Island Fish. As I said, the cod are making a very fragile comeback. And so we have this program that catches them one by one and takes really good care of them and sells them to lovely restaurants, usually in Ontario. And that brings the most money for the fish back to the island. And we do economic nutrition labeling for that. And you can see there that 69% of what we will sell that fish for in Toronto comes back to Fogo Island. And I hope you look for that on the menus in Toronto if you're out and about having, and please support restaurants, because it's been a rough go. And I think my father would be proud of this, that really through this work, we're turning money into fish. And that's the point. Money will do that if we just ask it. We have some other projects on the go. This church is becoming a big art space. And this old school, actually I went to grade 4, up to grade 4 in that school, is being turned into a food center. And we could talk about food for a very long time. We have a project that is just beginning to try and think about domestic architecture and ecologically responsible housing, and what would that look like at this day and age. And I also love this, that an acceptance of precariousness is a prerequisite to permanence. And it is precarious. Our relationship with place is precarious, and place itself is actually in trouble as well. So I think this is what I've been saying, but I want to repeat. We believe that the unit of change is community, place-based communities, and business is and should be used as a tool of community. And when we say community, we mean physical places where we live in some kind of a tangle with each other. Memorial University spent, I don't know, a couple of years out here studying what we were doing. And I thought you'd enjoy knowing that they distilled their descriptions of what we were doing into a case study, and they call it the place model, which I actually quite like. And then that became a Harvard business case study. So I think this is the journey we're all on together, is to actually reshape the economy so that it's a network of nodes made up of companies and governments and institutions and communities that can be differently sized, geographically distributed, and most importantly, accountable to place. And we need to make that systemic tilt in order to integrate communities into the economy, because as the economy has been running for the last 50 years, it's companies loosely regulated by government. We've got to put communities back in the picture. And, there are many challenges with communities. It's not like a happy place where everybody loves each other and it's all, kumbaya. It's a struggle on a good day. And it's the struggle that we're struggling for. But one of the things that I think really challenges communities is sometimes we suffer from a politics of feelings, not facts. And that is another reason why I'm so excited about GIS, because I think it allows us to assemble these layers of facts so we can all see them together. We have this pilot project that we're in the process of now. It's a year-long pilot that has to do with strengthening community economies. It's framed in the thinking of a fellow named Rajan, who wrote this book called The Three Pillars, being community, government, and business, and how do we bring these pillars together. We have partners in this pilot project, and they're listed there, and I'm very, very happy that Esri is a partner, and it's really a foundational partner in this work. And the prototyping communities are 5 of us that are working together on this over the course of the next year. And this is what we kind of are inspired by, the work of Elinor Ostrom, who won a Nobel Prize in the early 2000s, that which is possible in practice is possible in theory. So let's try and show what can be done. Our pilot's focusing on these things: attracting and retaining capital, building capacity at the community level, data. We don't know, we don't even know what we don't know. There is a whole lot more we don't know than we do know. And for example, there's very little in this country data that's collected at the community level, and maybe at the provincial level. I mean, do we know the GDP even, or the GDI of individual communities? It's knowable, but I don't think we know it. And what are those proper collaborative structures that we need in order to solve the actual problems we have? I will leave you with a question, which is, if you could have something written on a t-shirt that everyone in the world would get, could be a drawing, anything you like, and in their language, what would you say? And I would say this: it matters who owns what, because owners determine business models, and business models determine the outcomes, in particular, the outcomes for place. And I'm going to finish with a quote from another Nobel Prize winning economist. She wasn't an economist, she was a social activist, but she was based in Chicago, and she was a housing activist, actually. And her work is about our common life. And of course, our common life means our community life. And I want to say that GIS is such an important part of making visible the important facts and layers and fabric even of our shared life, or our common life, our community life. And if we can build on that information and take the insights we need, I think we'll be better collaborators with each other in community. And I think we can have a much better chance of doing what Jack Dangerman said in the little video when he said we can build a better world. So I think that is the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zita. That was just incredible. And I've heard you talk about this before in bits and pieces, but you brought this together so beautifully. And I want to go back to your very first slide where you talked about every snowflake in an avalanche pleads not guilty. I think that is just brilliant, because when you're skiing in the mountains and you see every snowflake come down, you can see them on the back of your glove. And then you see a big avalanche go down. The power of those individual flakes working together is just mind-boggling. And I guess my first question is, how do we take the power of people working together to create such destruction and reverse that? And you've given us a great example of how you attacked it in Fogo Island, but how do you get all the flakes around the world to work together? What's the interest of the flake that's positive?
I think the first thing, Alex, is to stop blaming the other flakes. And I think that's one of the, this kind of, maybe dissent is too strong a word, but descent into populism is, I find that really dangerous. And I think that Andrew Potter was right when he said, we really haven't built that collaborative structures we need to solve the problems we actually have. Look at what's going on in Glasgow. In fact, my big question out of Glasgow is who's negotiating with who about what? It's so confusing. And of course, these are not regulatory bodies yet, but I think the greatest power we have as snowflakes, and we're all a snowflake, is right here, wherever it is we live. And if you live in Toronto, for example, you live in a neighborhood, and that neighborhood is a community. And I think that is the basic element of change. It's the basic element of organizing. It's our most fundamental collaborative structure. And somehow, in the kind of mad rush into the abstract world of technology and money, we kind of forgot about that. And, I often have people say to me, well, it's all very well and fine for you. You actually live in a real community. I was like, well, where do you live? On the moon by yourself? Everybody lives in a real community, and it's as simple as going and speaking to the person next door. So I think that's what we do. I think that's where the power is.
So community building is very popular these days. Barack Obama got elected president of the United States by being a community builder, but not every community has a Zita Cobb or a Barack Obama. And I know you've interviewed him. What does it take? What are the attributes, I guess, of the community builders, the community champions that aren't one in a billion?
Alex, I have never believed in heroes. I think like my father was a hero to me, and I think to anyone that knew him, but he wasn't, he didn't stand up and say, okay, follow me, or, I've got these ideas. He just lived his life in a tangle with other people. And I think the champions are each and every one of us. And if I look at Fogo Island, I think I'm just the most vocal person on Fogo Island, but this is 2,500 community builders on this island, each and every person every day. Like we have, I think it's 36 associations on this island. Every one of them is a part of the fabric of place. And so I think it's just believing in ourselves. Like the structure of life is just the sum of all of the little things that happen. And so I think we should stop looking for heroes, because I think that's kind of a myth, and just go about our business. And it starts with just caring and realizing, instead of focusing on what we can't do and can't control, focus on the things that we can. And I think that's true as business owners. Every business has people in it. Every business has a board of directors. We just need to make different decisions.
So as a business, an owner of a large company and now a small company and a nonprofit and everything, what would be your advice to business owners out there?
My main piece of advice is, you as a business, I don't care which business I don't care if you're Jeff Bezos, although I doubt he would agree with what I'm about to say, you are accountable to place. You're accountable to the places that people live. And look, and closely and examine what is your relationship with those places. Are you actually strengthening them? Are you undermining them? And maybe we'll get an interview with Jeff Bezos so he and I can debate that. Yeah, I guess he's going to try and make an extraterrestrial capitalist settlement somewhere else where maybe there aren't other people. But I think it's about renewing. If you had and lost a relationship with place, and even if you are a company that exists mostly in a digital platform, it doesn't matter. Your work touches place. So thinking about what you're doing, are you supporting it or undermining it is number one. And I think when you start with that, it leads you to what's the next sensible thing to do. I mean, Esri is, to me, a company that by its very nature supports place. It's place building. And I didn't say this in the presentation, Alex, but you and I spoke about this earlier. I think for every community in the world, every physical community, I shouldn't have to say physical, but people have misappropriated the word community in so many ways. When I mean a place-based community needs to have a digital twin. And I think if it doesn't have a digital twin, I don't know how it's going to survive, because it simply won't, quote unquote, exist in our imagination and in our planning and in the economy. And that's what that's why I'm so excited about GIS, because I think that's a part of building that.
Well, that's a wonderful note to end on, and every one of the people on this GIS Day celebration are celebrating the creation of those digital twins of their community. So I think that's excellent advice. Focus on your community. So thank you, Zita, very much.